The Snow White 2025 disaster just keeps getting worse. As of October 2024, Disney's in full-blown panic mode across nearly all their divisions. Lucasfilm's a mess, Marvel Studios is in free fall, and now their live-action remake machine is imploding, with Snow White being the biggest train wreck of them all. In this one, we've got Gal Gadot and Rachel Zegler in the lead roles, and it's no surprise that the production is falling apart. They've thrown so much money at this dumpster fire, but now they've got drama between the actors, reshoots coming up, and budget issues that are making Disney sweat bullets. They're planning reshoots around December, but word is they might have to scramble and start in late November just to keep this sinking ship afloat. Now, Snow White was already a disaster long before Rachel Zegler went full meltdown mode, but she's definitely the cherry on top. This movie's been cursed since the Peter Dinklage controversy. Oh yeah, remember that? That's when he called out Disney for their backwards portrayal of dwarves. And here we are, still spiraling. But back to the main event. Things between Gal Gadot and Rachel Zegler have gotten nasty, and it's making the production even worse. The latest escalation? Gal's had enough of Rachel's ridiculous social media antics, where she's using her political hot takes to promote Snow White. Gal confronted her over it, calling her post offensive and telling her to knock it off. But of course, Rachel, being Rachel, refused to take anything down. Classic. And here's where it gets juicy. Gal's tight with Snow White director Mark Webb, and she went straight to him to get a major scene of Rachel's cut from the movie. It was supposedly one of Rachel's best moments, where Snow White leads the 7 dwarves and some new characters called the Outsiders in a battle against Gal's evil queen. But thanks to Gal pointing out how awful the scene was, it's been completely removed. Yeah, you heard that right. Rachel's so-called crowning moment got thrown in the trash because Gal complained, and honestly, good for her. Apparently, Rachel made filming that scene a nightmare, dragging out 15 takes because she insisted on doing things her way, exhausting everyone on set, especially Gal. And it didn't help that when they test-screened the scene, Gal's performance tanked, largely because of Rachel's nonsense. So, Gal got her buddy Mark Webb to talk to Disney, and boom, the whole sequence is gone. Bob Iger himself made the call to cut it. Imagine being such a pain that your co-star gets your best scene deleted. That's how far Rachel Zegler has fallen. Naturally, this set off a full-on war between Rachel and the Disney execs. She's furious with Gal for getting her scene pulled, and now their feud is at an all-time high. Gal's even refused to do any press with Rachel, tanking planned interviews with Vanity Fair and The View. So, if you were hoping to see them pretending to be friends on a press tour, forget it. It's not happening. And honestly, can you blame Gal? Rachel Zegler's behavior is sinking what's left of this movie. Between her woke rants, her attitude on set, and the way she's dragging the whole production down, it's no wonder Disney's freaking out. They've already delayed Snow White multiple times. And if they don't get these reshoots done by February 2025, they're looking at pushing the release into the summer, which would completely screw up their marketing plans. Now let's be real here. If Disney tries to rush through these reshoots, it's going to be a total disaster. The cast is already worn out, the tension on set is through the roof, and it's only going to get worse. You can tell when actors don't care, and that's exactly what we're going to see if they rush this. The whole movie's going to feel phoned in, and audiences can smell that from a mile away. At this point, Disney's best bet might just be to admit defeat and bury this movie alongside their other recent flops. It's been nothing but bad press since the beginning. Families who loved the 1937 original are already disgusted by the woke nonsense they're shoehorning in, and the general public isn't buying it either. But Disney doesn't learn. They're doubling down on their DEI agenda as usual, and it's blowing up in their faces. Bob Iger, in all his wisdom, recently came out and said anyone who opposes DEI is part of the problem. Sure, Bob, because it's definitely the audience's fault that your movies are tanking, not the fact that you've prioritized messaging over telling a decent story. Diversity is great when it's organic, but Disney's been force-feeding this stuff into their films without any regard for quality storytelling. And guess what? People hate it. So that's where we're at. Gal Gadot's had enough of Rachel Zegler's nonsense, the movie's in shambles, and Disney's panicking behind the scenes. At this point, the question isn't whether Snow White will be a flop, it's just how big of a flop it'll be. Stay tuned, because this disaster's far from over.